Chapter 130th. What to listen next. This is not a list of recommendations, not a top 10 videos that will change your life. I'm not a therapist, not a content curator. I'm a person who at some point couldn't get up off the floor and was searching in books, in videos, in other people's voices for anything to hold on to. Everything below is what I've watched myself. If even one of these videos gives you what it gave me, then this section was worth writing. All the videos I talk about in this section, with working links, are collected on my website. Go to https://www.faithwithinyou.com/links. Breathing. A separate section, because breathing is what works when nothing else does, when words run out, when your head loops the same thoughts over and over, when the body is locked and won't let go. I won't explain how this works here, that's already in the book. Here, specific practices I use myself. Calm the chaos. Grounding breath work, 13 minutes. When you need to calm down fast, anxiety, panic, the feeling that everything is about to fall apart. 13 minutes and the ground is back under your feet. Not magic. Physiology. The parasympathetic nervous system activates through breathing faster than through thoughts. If you have moments when everything inside is screaming, start here. This is the first aid that's always with you. Inner child. Guided breathwork for transformation, 28 minutes. A breathwork practice aimed at connecting with the inner child. 28 minutes, and you may discover that inside you lives someone you stopped hearing long ago. Small, frightened, waiting. This isn't mysticism. It's the body remembering what came before words. Breathing lessons, playlist. A series of short lessons on the basics of breathwork. A good entry point if you've never worked with breathing consciously. You don't need to believe. You don't need to understand. You just need to breathe. And watch what happens. For someone who's used to living in their head and disconnecting from the body, this is the first bridge back. Breath Hold Training Program, 31 sessions. A 31-session program, gradually increasing breath hold times. Sounds technical, but the effect is therapeutic. When you learn to stay in the discomfort of a breath hold, you're training the same thing therapy trains, the ability not to flee from a sensation, to be in it, to endure, and to discover you're still whole. Full sessions, playlist, breathwork. Complete breathwork sessions from short to long. When the basics are clear and you want practice, you can turn it on and lie down. Turn it on and cry. Turn it on and discover the body remembers what the mind forgot long ago. Energy alignment, guided breathwork, 55 minutes. A long, deep breathing session, 55 minutes. This is not for background. It's for moments when you need to drop deep inside and let the body do what it wants. Emotions may surface, images, tears, anger that had nowhere to go for years. That's normal. The body speaks a language we were never taught. 8 stages of awakening. Guided breathwork journey by Enfold. Another deep session structured with stages. For those already familiar with breathwork who want to go further. Not recommended as a first experience, but when you're ready, it's a powerful tool. The body remembers everything. Breathing gives it permission to let go. Alan Watts, Stop Trying to Fix Yourself. The Wisdom of Living Fully. Alan Watts says the thing you can't hear until you're exhausted from fixing yourself. You are not broken. You are not a project, not a task, not a mistake that needs correcting. For someone from a dysfunctional family, this sounds like a foreign language. Because your entire childhood told you the opposite, with words, with silence, with looks. You learned to see yourself as defective, learned to chase an ideal that doesn't exist, learned to measure your worth through achievement, because simply being was never enough. Watts doesn't comfort, he flips the frame. Chasing a better version of yourself is also running away from who you actually are. A flower doesn't try to bloom. A wave doesn't apologize for how it crashes. If you're ready, even for a second, to consider that you are already enough, not someday, but right now, this video will shake something loose. 5 things I wish I knew sooner about healing shame. Shame is not an emotion, it's a belief. Deep, pre-verbal. There's something wrong with me. Not with what I did, with who I am. For a child from a dysfunctional family, shame is like air. You don't notice it until you start to suffocate. It hides behind perfectionism. I must be flawless so they won't reject me. Behind control, if I hold everything together, nothing bad will happen. Behind people pleasing, if I'm convenient enough, they won't leave. This isn't personality. These are survival strategies that once saved your life, but they keep running, even when the danger is long gone. If you catch yourself thinking, I'm not good enough more than once a day, that's not the truth about you. That's shame talking. This video helps you hear the difference. 6 deep and lasting ways to improve your self-esteem. Self-esteem isn't what you think about yourself in the morning. It's the foundation everything else stands on. For someone who grew up in a family where your value was determined by behavior, obedience, grades, silence, self-esteem doesn't form. Instead, there's a constant check. Am I good enough? Do they still tolerate me? This video isn't about affirmations or believe in yourself. It's about the deeper mechanics, how to stop measuring yourself by other people's standards, how to tell real I want from I must so they'll love me. For those of us who learn to live through achievement and approval, this is the beginning of a different conversation with yourself. Heidi Priebe, Emotional Self-Intimacy, What It Is and How to Foster It. Heidi Priebe is one of the voices on YouTube that talks about psychology and trauma in a way that makes you recognize yourself. Not a therapist in a chair, a person who explains what you feel but can't name. Self-intimacy is the ability to be present with yourself in an undefended state, not running from what you feel, not switching off, not numbing, not going into your head, just staying. For someone who grew up in a family where feelings were dangerous, this sounds impossible. Anger was suppressed, fear was ridiculed, sadness was ignored, and you learn one thing: don't feel, or feel, but quietly so no one notices. It mattered to me to hear about anger. That anger is a built-in signal that a boundary has been violated, that if anger was suppressed since childhood, you lose access to that signal. Suppressed anger is not anger that doesn't exist. It's anger that has nowhere to go. Priebe explains, the energy of no, anger, resentment, disgust, even shame, is the body saying, this is not mine. Here's a boundary. When you can't hear your no, you lose access to your yes, too. Everything inside goes still. You stop wanting, enjoying, engaging, not because you're broken, but because you don't know where someone else ends and you begin. Heidi Priebe, Building Distress Tolerance, How to Stay Present with Hard Feelings and Expand Your Comfort Zone. Distress tolerance is not about endurance, not about clench your teeth and hold on. It's about the ability to stay in contact with what hurts and not fall apart. If you grew up where emotions were dangerous, you have a set of automatic responses: freeze, flee, please, dissolve. They saved you as a child. But now, every time something strong rises inside, you automatically leave into control, into thoughts, into your phone, into food, into work, anywhere, except into what you're actually feeling. Prebe shows how to expand the zone where you can tolerate a feeling without running, without rewriting it, without rationalizing. It's not heroism, it's practice, little by little, one breath at a time. And this may be one of the most important things you can learn after a dysfunctional family, because without it, real closeness is impossible. Heidi Priebe, Neuroticism, Understanding Our Attempts to Self-Regulate Around Unconscious Pain. Neuroticism is not a diagnosis, not an insult. It's an attempt to cope with pain you're not aware of. All those patterns, obsessive thoughts, anxiety, control, perfectionism, constantly scanning people, that's not who you are. That's your psyche trying to regulate what was too much for a child. For those who grew up in chaos, control became the only form of safety. You can't relax because relaxing meant missing a blow. You scanned faces because the adult's mood decided whether tonight would be normal or catastrophic. You planned 3 moves ahead because unpredictability was dangerous. Prebe names it plainly. Neurotic patterns are the best you could come up with in conditions where no other tools existed. They were brilliant for survival, but they weren't built for living. Understanding this doesn't mean letting go immediately, but it means stop hating yourself for how you're wired. The secret of emotional healing that no one explains to you. Carl Jung. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. For a child from a dysfunctional family, this is not a metaphor. It's your daily schedule. You choose partners who repeat the familiar pain. You react to situations that ended long ago. You fear what no longer exists, but the body doesn't know that. You replay the same scripts and wonder why everything keeps repeating. This video is about the shadow, about what we cut off from ourselves to survive, the anger that was forbidden, the needs that were mocked, the joy that was punished. Everything you hid didn't disappear. It lives inside and knocks at every conflict, every attempt at closeness, every choice. Healing isn't about becoming better, it's about reclaiming what was taken. If you do this, you will heal the most painful memories of your past. Carl Jung. A continuation of the Jungian thread, but here the focus is sharper. How to work with memories that still wound. Not forget them, not push them down, but live through them differently. For someone with complex trauma, painful memories aren't just the past. They ignite in the present, a smell, a tone of voice, a word, and you're no longer here. You're back where it was terrifying. Jung shows the path goes through the pain, not around it. You don't need to become stronger. You need to stop running. Tim Fletcher, Shame and Complex Trauma, Part 1/6. What is shame? Tim Fletcher has spent 15 years working with people who survived complex trauma, and he starts with the essential. Shame is not an emotion. It's a core belief about yourself. It gets wired in during childhood and becomes your operating system. He describes what every one of us knows. Before the conversation about shame begins, people say, I don't have any shame. By the end, it was running everything. Shame is invisible while you're inside it, like a fish doesn't know it's in water. For someone in the ACA program, this is critical material. Shame is behind the hyper-responsibility. If I don't do it, nobody will. Behind the inability to ask for help, I have no right to need. Behind the feeling of I don't deserve. Behind giving more than you take your entire life and calling it normal. The 6-part series is long, but it's worth every minute. Tim Fletcher, sigh. 12 Needs in Complex Trauma, bite-sized series. Fletcher breaks down 12 basic needs that were unmet in children from dysfunctional families: safety, belonging, recognition, autonomy, the right to make mistakes, the right to be a child. When you hear this list and realize you didn't have a single one, first it hurts, then it gets clear, because you finally see what exactly was missing. Not something vague, something specific. And when you know what wasn't there, you can start giving it to yourself. Tim Fletcher, Intimacy versus Isolation, the healing work most people skip. Intimacy versus isolation, one of the developmental stages that most people with complex trauma skip. Not because they don't want closeness, but because closeness is what caused pain. Fletcher explains why after a dysfunctional family, you either dissolve into another person or keep your distance, and can't find the middle. It's not weakness, it's traumatic adaptation. And to learn how to be close, without merging and without fleeing, you first need to acknowledge that this skill simply was never formed. Tim Fletcher, Realistic Recovery, Components of Success, Part 3 of 13. Fletcher says what few people say. Recovery is not an inspiring montage. It's a long, uneven road, with setbacks, with days when nothing seems to work, with moments when you want to quit. This series is about realistic expectations, about the fact that success in recovery is not the absence of pain. It's the ability to move through pain without falling apart. For someone used to binary thinking, I'm either healed or hopeless, this is an important shift. Tim Fletcher, Realistic Recovery, Questions and Fears, Part 11 of 13. What if I start feeling and can't stop? What if without my defenses I won't survive? What if everyone sees who I really am? Fletcher names the fears that block recovery out loud, by name, and it gets easier, because you realize you're not the only one feeling this. It's not your unique defect. It's a shared experience of people starting from the same place. Tim Fletcher, Realistic Recovery, Helpful Perspectives, Part 13 of 13. The final part of the series, and it's not a happy ending. It's about perspectives that help you keep going when it feels pointless, about the fact that recovery is not linear, that setbacks are not failures, that slow still counts, and that you're further along than you think. Alan Watts, Relax, your past is over. Don't return to it. The second Watts on this list, and he's here for a reason. If the first video is about you're not broken, this one is about let go of what's already over. For someone with trauma, the past is not past. It lives in the body, in reactions, in the way you clench your jaw in an elevator with a stranger, in the way you prepare for catastrophe 3 weeks before an event that may never happen, in the way you reread old messages, not because you miss them, but because you're searching for proof you were loved. Watts doesn't say forget. He asks, why do you keep returning to the place you're begging to be rescued from? What you called love may have been fear. What you called loyalty may have been the absence of choice. The past matters as a lesson, but living in it is not faithfulness to yourself. It's a trap. Sadhguru, Overcome Fear, Anger, and Anxiety. Sadhguru says what almost no Western therapist says: you are not your emotions. Anger is not an entity. You become angry. Fear is not an object. You become frightened. And between you and the emotion, there's a gap. Tiny, but everything is in it. For someone from a dysfunctional family, someone who learned to merge with every feeling or shut down completely, this is a radical thought. You don't need to avoid anger. You don't need to suppress it. Just see. Here I am, and here's what I'm experiencing. They're not the same thing. Between I feel anger and I am angry, there's a chasm, and in that chasm, freedom. For those who spent a lifetime fearing their own emotions because they were punished for having them, this may be the first step toward not being afraid of yourself. 7 powerful things to tell yourself every morning. Shiheng-yi. Shiheng-yi is a Shaolin monk, but this isn't about religion. It's about the discipline of your inner dialogue, about what you say to yourself in the morning before the world starts speaking for you. For someone whose inner critic wakes up before they do, this is practice, not affirmations, not positive thinking, a conscious choice. Which voice do you listen to first? The one that says you can't handle it, or the one that says you're here and that's already enough? Jesus versus Buddha, love versus non-attachment. 2 models of love. One says, love so fiercely you'd die for it. The other, love so freely you'd let it go. For someone with attachment trauma, this is not a philosophical debate. It's a daily dilemma. You either cling and suffocate, or pull away and feel empty. Love and fear are tangled. Closeness and control, too. You're afraid of losing, and that's exactly why you lose. This video shows love and attachment are not the same thing. You can love without clinging. You can let go without stopping to love. For someone who grew up where love was conditional, where you paid for it with obedience or silence, this isn't obvious, but it's possible. Miyamoto Musashi, How to Master Your Emotions. Musashi, a samurai who wrote the Book of 5 Rings before he died. He didn't know the word trauma, but he knew what it means to live when the only thing you can lean on is yourself. Mastering emotions doesn't mean suppressing them. Musashi taught something else. Observe. Don't fear your own inner chaos. Don't run from what you feel. Stand in it and choose action, not reaction. For someone who grew up where every emotion could cost you your safety, this hits close. Your whole life you either suppressed or exploded. Musashi shows a third way. Be inside the feeling and not lose yourself. It's a skill, not a gift. A skill. Rainer Maria Rilke, The Purpose of Life. Rilke didn't write about trauma. He wrote about solitude as if he knew what it felt like from the inside. For someone from a dysfunctional family, loneliness is familiar territory, but Rilke speaks of a different solitude, not the kind that comes from being abandoned, the kind that comes from choosing to be honest with yourself, from the courage to live the questions instead of other people's answers. If your whole life you adapted, pleased, said yes when you wanted to say no, Rilke reminds you real life begins with honesty. Sometimes it hurts, sometimes it's lonely, but it's yours. The Ecstasy of Aloneness, Rainer Maria Rilke. Another Rilke, and it's here because for us, solitude is not an abstraction. It's every evening, every holiday where you smile but feel hollow inside. Rilke offers a different lens. Solitude is not punishment, is the space where you can finally hear yourself. Not other people's voices, not expectations, not criticism. Yourself. For someone who spent a lifetime listening to everyone except themselves, this is a revelation. Huberman Lab. Dr. Martha Beck. Access your best self with mind-body practices, belief testing, and imagination. Martha Beck isn't just a coach. She's someone who walked through her own trauma and built a system at the intersection of body, mind, and imagination. Huberman asks scientific questions, and she answers with a researcher's precision and the warmth of someone who knows what it's like. For those stuck between I know what needs to change and I can't move, this conversation is a bridge. Beck explains how the body stores beliefs, how imagination is not escape from reality, but a tool that can restructure it. If you've tried everything, therapy, books, programs, but feel something is stuck deeper than words can reach, listen to this one. I don't know which of these will work for you. Maybe none. Maybe one video out of 25, and it will be the one. Don't rush. You don't need to watch everything. You don't need to understand everything. Sometimes one voice is enough, saying what you already knew but wouldn't let yourself know.